Hey everyone, there are some buildings and structures around the world, some of which are still relatively intact, that are as old as time itself. So, join me for today's video. We're going to count down the top 15 oldest Göbekli Tepe. While there may be some gaps in the timeline of humanity, we pretty much know for sure our overall trajectory. Or do we? Even now and then, something shows up that tests the authenticity of everything we've ever known and forces us to go back to the drawing board. It's been agreed on that early humans first settled into their permanent towns, built farms, and then temples, all in that order, at about 8000 BCE. But a 1994 discovery kind of blew that theory wide open. Archaeologists in rural Turkey stumbled upon a fantastic finding in Göbekli Tepe. It included rings of enormous stone pillars, all of which had scenes of animals carved right into them. After some serious carbon dating, they found that Göbekli Tepe dates back to the 10th millennium BCE, making it the oldest place of worship in the world. Or at least until something even older decides to unearth itself. Göbekli Tepe raises some great questions. Mainly, who were these people and who or what were they worshipping? How did they worship? Part of the beauty is, we'll never really know. But it's these types of questions that can keep scholars and academics up at night. And to make matters even more bizarre, evidence would suggest that the people there were semi-nomadic hunters who didn't quite understand the concept of agriculture, especially because the cultivation of the earth at that level wouldn't appear for another 500 years. So now we have a classic chicken or the egg scenario here. Which came first, architectural projects and then permanent settlements? Or was it the other way around? The only people who can know for sure were the ones who were there. And who knows, perhaps the people who dig up our cities millions of years from now could be asking the same questions about us. Number 14. Masada. If there's one thing that every great civilization had, it was a strong fortress. The ancient fortress of Masada is without a doubt one of the most impressive ruins you'll ever come across. For starters, Masada sits at the top of a cliff overlooking the Judean desert and the Dead Sea. It's beautiful at any time of the day, but if you can get back there for the sunrise, you'll be in for a truly spectacular sight. The history of Masada goes back thousands of years, built as the palace of King Herod, who ruled from 37 BCE to 4 BCE. This fortress was carved right into the mountain itself, but it was still able to house some creature comforts of the old days, like swimming pools and bathhouses. In fact, Masada's irrigation system can still be seen in the scenery below. It's pretty amazing how something like this can withstand the test of time and erosion, and a hike up the ancient site is well worth the trek. But perhaps its biggest claim to fame is that Masada saw the last stand of the Jewish revolt. While under siege by the Romans, the ancient Jewish people chose death by their own hands rather than a life of slavery under Roman rule, when the Romans would eventually make it through the fortress walls. Number 13. Karnak. Alright, you can't have a list of old buildings without talking about Egypt. The country has all sorts of ruins and is even home to one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world. But for now, we're talking about the Karnak temple complex in Luxor, Egypt. The first thing you'll notice about Karnak is the sheer size of the site. It's absolutely huge, and with so many massive sculptures carved right into the wall, like the Avenue of the Sphinxes, one can only wonder what it was like to walk that stretch in ancient times. Karnak is one of the largest cities on Earth, and it's here you'll find plenty of temples, sanctuaries, obelisks, and shrines devoted to the gods of old. But what's pretty crazy is that Karnak took a full 2,000 years to build, making it another classic example of a project that most of the people who worked on it could never see the finished product. And all of the pharaohs who ruled during that construction left their own personal architectural mark on the sprawling city. With sites like the Great Hypostyle Hall and the towering pylons and solid sandstone columns, Karnak is easily one of the most photographed places in Egypt. And make sure you visit the stone scarab, because if you walk around the statue 7 times, it's said to bring you good luck in your love life. Number 12. The Colosseum. Easily one of the most iconic ruins anywhere, the Colosseum is a landmark of ancient Roman history, culture, and of course, architecture, and is one of the 7 wonders of the world. The Romans were obviously doing something right, and although they gave us many of the modern luxuries we take for granted today, like roads, sanitation, aqueducts, and even ancient postal services, they also loved sanctioned public violence. And while some may scoff at the idea of gladiator bouts and animal fights in the Colosseum, it's all too similar to events like MMA or pro wrestling that we enjoy today. The Colosseum, though, was officially unveiled to the Roman populace in the year 80 AD and could seat 50,000 people. And even by today's standards, it's an impressive piece of architecture, with the outer walls made of 3 levels of archways with Ionic, Doric, and Corinthian columns, which were all decorated with marble statues back in the day. And the top level even supported a massive awning that sheltered spectators from the elements, so you had a good seat even if you were in the nosebleeds. Number 11. Tower of Jericho. The Tower of Jericho is easily one of the most popular ancient sites amongst historians, both professional and amateur alike, thanks to the story of the Walls of Jericho battle. But this ancient structure is also one of the oldest buildings in the world, dating back to pre-pottery Neolithic period in about 8000 BCE. Not only is this structure as old as time, but it's also said to be the world's first stone building, and quite possibly the world's first work of monumental architecture. Standing at just 28 feet tall, this ancient stone tower wasn't discovered until the 1930s by John Garstang during an excavation. To this day, many people are still asking just what the Tower of Jericho symbolizes or why it was built. At first, there were theories that it was once a tomb, but that was all thrown out the window when no bodies or other signs of burial were found. Then there are those who believe that the Tower of Jericho serves a more astronomical purpose. It's possible that ancient astronomers could have used the tower to study the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, but more modern studies have theorized that the Tower of Jericho was built not only as a marker or timekeeping device, but also as a stone guardian against the dangers present in the darkness cast by a dying sun's last rays of light. A reconstruction revealed that as the summer solstice sunset, the shadow of a hill to the west fell exactly on the Jericho Tower before covering the village, suggesting the monument and the start of longer nights were linked. But one thing's for sure, the only people who knew the tower's true purpose are the people who built it nearly 10,000 years ago. Number 10. Çatalhöyük. First uncovered in 1958, the archaeological site Çatalhöyük has since been revealed to be a massive city complex that likely housed around 10,000 citizens in its interconnected system of primitive homes, most of which seems to be conspicuously free of debris. So unlike many modern-day cities, these people of old actually cleaned up after themselves. This densely populated proto-city was quite simple, constructed mostly of simple mud brick rooms that look as though they've been added onto again and again as the community grew over the next few centuries. It's believed that Çatalhöyük reached its height around 7000 BCE. Oddly enough, though, the ancient structures seem to be domestic in purpose, with a noticeable lack of commercial or craft-centered spaces, so if you needed groceries, then you needed to go to the next neighborhood. But this most likely attributes the once sprawling city's lack of trash and debris, because if the structures of Çatalhöyük were strictly domestic, then they were most likely kept cleaner than they might have been in a more cosmopolitan version of civilization with more public spaces. So if archaeologists didn't find historic trash, then what did they uncover? Well, figurines of animals and goddesses were discovered, along with cave paintings and other forms of art adorning the halls. And plenty of human remains too, which look like they were buried underneath the floors. Today, portions of the site have been turned into living exhibits, with recreated replicas of what the rooms may have looked like in 7000 BC. Excavation continues at the site to this day, discovering both how our ancient ancestors lived and how clean they seem to have been.
The remaining part next.